and then Greene comes back, and that whole campaign leads into the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. And even though the British take the field, their casualties were so high that they couldn't afford very more victories. They won it tactically, but Greene won it strategically because he was able really to cripple Cornwallis. So Cornwallis decides, well, I'm going to go to Wilmington and get resupplied. And so he goes to Wilmington, and then the ultimate insult was that Greene didn't even follow him. Greene just kind of stayed up around the Guilford area just to kind of watch him so he could go north or go south or go wherever he needed to go. And so Cornwallis was supposed to get on the ships and go back to New York. There at Wilmington, and his troops did get reissued. And they decided, well, I'm going to go to Virginia because the war hasn't affected Virginia very much. And so what I'll do is I'll go to this little seaport called Yorktown, and I'll get resupplied there, and if I have to be evacuated, I can be evacuated. He wasn't counting on the French fleet showing up. First time the French fleet ever showed up during the... See, they'd had the alliance since 1777. This is now 1781. And the French were there, but they hadn't really done a whole lot. And so this is they're coming up the coast to get away from the hurricane season in the Caribbean. And they get there the day before the relief fleet from Clinton comes south from New York. And they have this battle called the Battle of the Capes. And they defeat the British. The British go back to... The Royal Navy goes back to New York. And Cornwallis is trapped, because what happens is he goes down the peninsula, spends a week or so in Williamsburg, and then moves on to Yorktown and starts digging in. He had about a month to prepare for this siege that was coming up. And so Washington, who really wanted to take New York, that was what he really wanted to go, but they convinced him, if you can get your army down to the peninsula of Yorktown, because you have the York River on one side and the James River on the other side, we can trap him. And since the French fleet has basically bottled him up, and so what he wanted to do is try to leave, because he was in a place called New Windsor, which was kind of northwest of New York. Both armies were so dug in that neither had the troops to get rid of the other ones. They just kind of looking at each other. So Washington steals the march. They leave some troops behind with the campfires. By the time Washington is long gone, Clinton realizes that he's gone, doesn't exactly know where he's going, and they marched overland. And that's the one time when they were coming south of what was now Washington, D.C. Of course, D.C. didn't exist back then. And Washington spent about 2 or 3 days in Mount Vernon, and that's the first time he'd been back since he left in the spring of '75. And Rochambeau was there, and they had a little meeting and went on to Yorktown, and then it was classic siege warfare, and the ring kept getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's interesting, when Burgoyne surrendered at Saratoga, he kind of he went back to England persona non grata. But Cornwallis, because he was basically under Clinton, and Clinton was supposed to relieve him, Clinton didn't. He finally sends the relief force down the day that they surrender in October of 81. And so Cornwallis goes back to England. They make him the Inspector General of Ireland, and shortly after that they make him the Viceroy Governor of India. And he goes to India, and he lives until about 1806. And he dies in India, and that's where he's buried. And so the surrender didn't affect Cornwallis at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting persona. Right before the campaign of '76, after Washington had been forced out of New York and went across New Jersey and was basically on the other side of the Delaware River across from Trenton, Cornwallis was supposed to go home his wife was very ill. And of course, with Trenton and Princeton, the British had basically captured New Jersey, but now with those 2 victories, New Jersey now belonged to Washington, and they canceled his leave, and she died without ever having to see him. And he arrived here in the spring of '75, and so he'd been here. He was here 75 up until about the end of '81. But a very interesting person.
Oh, thank you.
Didn't mean to give you a history lesson.
No, I wanted a history lesson. Thank you.
That's my dress uniform. I'm kind of slumming it right now.